dawwara tassew f'opportunità li tagħti riżultati. U l-ikbar biża' illi kellna fl-Ewropa kienet illi nżommu l-impjiegi, illi nkunu qrib il-familji tagħna u il-mod ta' kif aġixxejna f'Malta wkoll tajna riżultati. Kenna ċans illi aħna nagħtu għajnuna fejn għandu x'jaqsam il-paga li nibqgħu nassistu bħala gvern u allura aħna żammejna l-impjiegi u konna kapaċi f'dan l-istess perjodu noħolqu impjiegi ġodda. Fil-fatt ir-rata tal-qatt minkejja il-pandemija hija l-inqas rata ta' qatt li Malta kellha f'dawn l-aħħar snin. Imma dawn ma ġewx waħedhom jew b'kombinazzjoni għaliex ħtafna din l-opportunità illi fi żmien illi l-ħwienet kienu magħluqa, il-lukandi kienu magħluqa. Użajna dan iż-żmien biex aħna inħarġu lin-nies fl-industrija u nkunu kapaċi noħolqu klima illi waqt dan il-perjodu noħolqu impjiegi tax-xogħol ġodda. Meta inħares lura lejn l-aħħar 20 xahar nara sitwazzjoni fejn kien hemm imbagħta u din hija realtà li rridu nirrikonoxxu bħala pajjiżi. Irridu naraw imma kif aħna ħadd ma jaqa' lura u l-inklużjoni allura għall-Ministeru fejn naħdem jiena l-enfasi li għamilna li anke fost persuni b'diżabilità noħolqu dik il-klima dawk l-inċentivi meħtieġa biex aħna nimbuttaw persuni b'diżabilità li ma jaqtawx lura fid-dinja tax-xogħol. Ħloqna diversi skemi inklużi il-ġimgħa stess li aħna ħloqna skema ġdida fejn min iħaddem għandu grants għal tal-apposta fejn aħna nagħtu lura 90% tal-investimenti li jkunu seħħew basta huma jattrezzaw il-post tax-xogħol għal persuni b'diżabilità u jimpjegaw persuni illi għandhom dawn id-diffikultajiet u wkoll aħna rajna kif aħna rridu niġġeddu bħala pajjiż fuq livell ta' diżabilità. L-bieraħ il-Gvern Malti nieda l-Istrateġija Nazzjonali għal persuni b'diżabilità biex toħodna l-10 snin li ġejjin u wkoll l-Istrateġija Nazzjonali li trid toħodna biex aħna iż-żgħażagħ f'Malta, iż-żgħażagħ Ewropej ukoll ikollhom vuċi b'saħħitha fid-diversi oqsma. Is-soċjal, il-postijiet tax-xogħol, l-ekonomija, imma wkoll irridu nibagħtu messaġġ b'saħħtu li l-Ewropa trid tkun verament Ewropa li tkun sostenibbli. Jiena nirringrazzja lil dawk kollha li lejla se jkunu qegħdin jagħtu l-kontribut tagħhom. Nawgura li din id-diskussjoni tħalli marka sabiħa u inħares il-qudiem biex inkompli nsegwi dan id-dibattitu. Grazzi ħafna.
Muchas gracias, querida ministra. Gracias, amigos y amigas, por acogernos aquí en este precioso lugar al Grupo de Socialistas y Demócratas para organizar este evento ciudadano de la Conferencia del Futuro de Europa. Porque el futuro de Europa es vuestro, está en vuestras manos. Y por eso, desde nuestro grupo político, queremos tener la oportunidad de buscar espacios de escucha, de que seáis vosotros los verdaderos protagonistas de esta conferencia, no quienes estamos acostumbrados a hablar horas y horas del proyecto europeo. Por eso hoy tenéis que ser vosotros los protagonistas y, por lo tanto, yo no voy a usar mucho del tiempo porque prefiero que sea para vosotros. La conferencia sobre el futuro de Europa es más necesaria que nunca. La pandemia nos ha enseñado algunas lecciones que seguramente estéis de acuerdo conmigo eran fundamentales para poder abordar este debate. Y es que cuando estamos juntos somos más fuertes. Y hay desafíos globales, hay desafíos comunes que necesitamos abordarlos dando posibilidad a la participación de la ciudadanía. Y esta conferencia tiene que ser una gran oportunidad para escuchar todas las voces, de hombres, de mujeres, de jóvenes y de personas mayores, de personas con discapacidad y de personas desempleadas, de inmigrantes, de todos aquellos que quieren trasladarnos, a los que tenemos la responsabilidad del proyecto europeo en nuestras manos, cómo tenemos que construir este proyecto, porque este es un proyecto compartido. Así que ha llegado la hora de hacer este ejercicio de escucha a través de la Conferencia del Futuro de Europa. Este es hoy un evento que trasladaremos en todos los rincones de la Unión Europea, para que podáis participar, para facilitaros esa participación. Yo sé que aquí, en Malta, lo estáis haciendo, como bien decía en el inicio de este acto. Hoy ya hemos tenido un dato importante y es que Malta está siendo uno de los países con mayor participación, ¿no?, en la plataforma digital, y tiene que ser también una participación en todos los espacios. Así que vamos a escucharnos, porque queremos saber si compartís nuestras ideas de Europa, si compartís con nosotros que necesitamos una Europa más social y más justa. Queremos saber si compartís con nosotros que los jóvenes necesitan tener certidumbres en el futuro y no solo hablar de formación y de empleo, sino también hablar de oportunidades, de buenos salarios, de acceso a la vivienda, de igualdad entre hombres y mujeres, que las mujeres no tengamos en Europa el problema que existe hoy en día en el que estamos cobrando menos salarios para hacer el mismo trabajo. Todas estas son cuestiones que nos afectan en el día a día. Todas estas son cuestiones que estoy segura que os preocupan y os ocupan, porque estáis aquí, porque vuestra presencia hoy aquí ya es el claro compromiso de que tenéis algo que decir. Y nuestra obligación y nuestra responsabilidad es escucharos. Así que la palabra es vuestra.
Thank you, Irache. Thank you, Minister. The whole purpose of this meeting today is to put our brains together to see how we can shape the future of Europe. And who better to tell us their ideas for the future of Europe than the President of the Young European Socialists and Spanish MEP, Alicia Homs-Hinel, and the head of the Maltese delegation, MEP Alfred Sanz. Following their interventions, I will open the floor to any questions from the audience. Alicia, Alfred, as we say in Maltese, fideikom. I also invite you to stand up and do your interventions from the floor. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Bueno, yo también intervendré en español, así que muchísimas gracias a todos y a todas. Es para mí un auténtico placer estar aquí hoy en Malta y, por supuesto, ver a tantísimas caras jóvenes en este evento. Yo creo que nuestra generación ha sido una generación muy afectada durante las crisis desde el 2008 hasta la actual. Una generación que en muchos casos se ha visto olvidada, que hemos sentido que se nos ha dejado atrás y ahora es el momento de que nosotros, la juventud, digamos la nuestra, ¿no?, utilicemos esta conferencia sobre el futuro de Europa para participar de manera muy activa, porque al final nuestra participación decidirá, ¿no?, lo que será Europa en el futuro. Yo creo que el gran éxito de esta conferencia, sin duda, será la participación de todo el mundo, pero yo creo que en especial de los y las jóvenes, porque hemos sido capaces de liderar grandes propuestas, como por ejemplo liderar la lucha contra el cambio climático. Hemos sido capaces de mostrar ser líderes en luchas tan importantes como esa, ¿no? Y yo creo que una vez más tenemos que ser conscientes y que liderar esta lucha por hacer de Europa un lugar mejor, un lugar de oportunidades, un lugar en el que nos sintamos cómodos y que al final refuerce ese proyecto europeísta por el que todos y todas trabajamos. Yo, como bien decía Irache, ¿no?, yo estoy hoy aquí también para escuchar vuestras voces, para escuchar vuestras opiniones, para tomar nota de ellas y para poder representar a la juventud en esta conferencia, en el plenario de la conferencia de la cual soy miembro y por tanto quiero que vuestra voz sea escuchada y representada, porque al final, como decía antes, el éxito de esta conferencia depende de la participación y nuestra participación ahora más que nunca es muy importante. Así que muchísimas gracias y bueno, ahora le doy la palabra a Alfred para que continúe.
Thank you very much. I'll use this paper just because I forget numbers. So I'll just read numbers first from it. 27 member states, 445 million people. Of them, 142 million only are between 0 and 29 years, less than a third. So the question is this: all these guys are in a context of an economy which is the largest in the world, 6% larger than the US economy, 12% larger than the Chinese, 15, 17, 18% larger than the Russian. The question is it a cohesive entity? And I think that's the first question that the Future of Europe conference should decide. First, the Conference for Europe should ask and reply to how questions, how to do things. And the first question is this: how can Europe, the EU, stay cohesive as it is? With all these guys there, coming from all these countries there, and having all these different nationalities, worldviews, how can it create a cohesive sense of purpose, of values, of vision, and of interests? And I would like the conference really to address these questions. And then the second point is quite important. What's going to be the role of Europe in the future? We get this question all the time and don't reply to it. Perhaps because we don't have yet a reply to the first question. And then the third point. What's going to be the fundamental value of Europe in the future? And I agree with the previous speakers. That value should be based on social equality, on all levels, at all ranges, in all states, and for all ethnic communities and minorities. But we have to talk about that, we have to discuss that, and we have to reply to the basic question all the time. How? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your interventions. May I ask you to stay on the floor just in case anyone would like to ask a question so we would be able to address it together. Are there any questions from the floor? Yes, I would just ask you to stand up and introduce yourself and which organization you're coming from, and the speakers to take the floor here as well, please.
So, good evening, Anna, good evening, Dr. Sand. I mean, Alicia, we are working together as well for this weekend. It's a great time to have socialists and Democrats from Europe in Malta. And now I will also say why, because over this week, the Socialists and Democrats of Europe have chosen Malta to discuss our future, to discuss what we need to look ahead of us, and we need to discuss and think of how we are going to make a more social Europe, of how we are going to make the economy work for those who earn the least in our society, of how we are going to help minorities to become part of the majority of society, of how we are going to tackle social exclusion. And that is very important that we are discussing here in Malta these topics. Malta, which has been a country championing progress, championing social mobility, championing equality over the past years. And it is important that we discuss this as we come together in solidarity, together because we have the same values, have the same principles. We may put them in practice in different ways and means, but we are coming together. And we need to be stronger to achieve the next step than the next steps, because we have different countries. Dr. Sant mentioned 27 different EU member states. We have different languages. We speak different languages. For instance, Minister Farrugia Portelli spoke in Maltese, and I would have loved also to speak in Maltese, but we are a bilingual country, and we also need to accept other different cultures, different identities, because we are also part of the European Union. And this is very important for us youths to be part of this conference. It is a privilege. I look forward also to hosting the Yes Congress this weekend for the first time in Malta, and we're looking forward to having you with us over the weekend as well. And let's give youths more voice. Let's give youths their space to express their ideas, because we have a lot of ideas to share. We are not only tomorrow's leaders, but we are also today's leaders. We are also today's decision makers. We have to decide what future do we need for ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you also to our speakers. We're off to a very good running start. I'm going to rush over to the next panel since also time is of the essence. As a political group, SND is doing its utmost to get involved and stay in touch with citizens about the Europe they would like to see. In fact, we have a video message from Marek Belka, who is the SND Vice President for International Trade and Engagement with Citizens and Institutions and co-chair of the SND Task Force on the Conference of the Future of Europe. Let's hear what he has to say.
Dear friends, we can all feel happy and proud that the Conference on the Future of Europe has finally started. It was our progressive pressure which did not allow this venture to be blocked. As the conference plenary and the citizens' panels have finally begun, we may now turn to the central part of this project, the discussions on key aspects of the future of Europe with our citizens. The conference is really about asking questions. For example, what has to be done on the European level and what on the local level, your country or on your locality, no matter whether you live in Slima or in Marshallock, to improve our common future. I would like to thank our Maltese colleagues for organizing this conference, which allows us to connect us, politicians, to the viewpoints of young people, NGOs, activists, trade union representatives, and engaged citizens. I look forward to the effects of the discussion on the future of Europe, its ecological transformation and digital transition. I encourage you to immerse yourself in in-depth exchanges with the representatives of our youth, as their voice should guide us in the building a future they hope for. Unfortunately, I cannot be with you in person, but I will follow the discussions online. Remember that the discussions we start today may continue further on social media, on the conference website, and on our own Progressives for Europe debating forum. I wish you all very fruitful and inspiring debates.
Just as Marek said, we are encouraging you to also enter into the hashtag Progressives for Europe and have your say online, even though you cannot be with us physically today. One of the main priorities we all want to see more action on is the transition to a more sustainable way of life. The growing crisis of the climate emergency means we need to take action now. S&D has fought hard for ambitious EU emissions targets and green goals to be included right across the board of European legislation. So my question to the next speakers is, are we doing enough to save the planet? I invite Cyrus Engerer, Maltese MEP, and Mohamed Shaheen, MEP and S&D Vice President for a Green New Deal to have their say. I invite you again to take the floor and speak on your behalf. Thank you.
Aħna kollha kemm aħna l-Unjoni Ewropea. Kull wieħed u waħda minna niġu minn fejn niġu, nitkellmu bil-Malti, should we speak in English? Algunos hablamos en español, but niġu minn fejn niġu minn madwar l-Unjoni Ewropea u ħafna drabi ħafna nies jgħidulna l-Ewropa mhux qed tagħmel hekk jew l-Ewropa mhux qed tagħmel ħaġa l-oħra. Fl-aħħar mill-aħħar l-Ewropa huwa aħna huwa allura hekk qegħdin biex nisimgħu lilkom kull wieħed waħda minnkom dwar dak illi tixtiequ taraw fil-futur ta' din l-Ewropa tagħna l-koll. U xtaqt nitkellem ftit fuq l-ambjent għaliex dak huwa wieħed mill-oqsma li qiegħed naħdem fuqhom fil-Parlament Ewropew. Jekk kelli nsaqsi lil kull wieħed waħda minnkom x'tixtiequ taraw, kulħadd jgħid li xi jara Unjoni Ewropea aktar ħadra, Malta iktar ħadra, Malta fejn konna aktar siġar, aktar arbuxelli, aktar ħdura in ġenerali. Però l-ambjent tagħna mhux biss il-ħdura, mhux biss is-siġar, mhux biss dak illi naraw, għax fl-aħħar mill-aħħar l-ambjent huwa is-saħħa tagħna l-koll. L-ambjent huwa is-saħħa tal-biodiversità kollha mhux biss fl-Unjoni Ewropea, però madwar id-dinja, u huwa s-saħħa tagħna l-bnedmin u l-kol kemm aħna u ħadd gost li għandna numru ta' mistednin barranin hawnhekk magħna llum u kulħadd qed jgħid qegħdin fl-aħħar ta' Settembru u hawn sħana kbira f'Malta u normali li konna sħana f'pajjiżna, però din is-sena l-kol kemm aħna esperjenzajna ħafna aktar sħana milli qatt ħassejna fil-passat. mhux aħna biss pajjiżna, imma f'numru ta' pajjiżi oħrajn fis-South tal-Ewropa, fin-Nord tal-Ewropa rajna diversi arar, xita bħal qatt ma rajna qabel nies illi sfortunatament mietu fil-Belġju, il-Ġermanja, fin-Netherlands. U allura wasal iż-żmien sabiex nieħdu azzjoni ħafna aktar konkreta milli ħadna aktar minn qatt qabel. Kull wieħed waħda minna nistgħu inħarsu lura u ngħidu stajna nagħmlu ħafna aħjar u bl-ebda dubju kemm aħna bħala Maltin, kemm aħna lkoll bħala Unjoni Ewropea u kemm aħna lkoll bħala dinja pjaneta globali stajna nagħmlu ħafna aħjar, però li nħarsu lura biss mhux biżżejjed għaliex il-futur huwa dak li ħajkun jaffettwa lil kull wieħed waħda minna fi żmien li ġej. Allura jridu niddeċidu llum x'irid ikun il-futur tagħna. U allura fil-Parlament Ewropew għaddejna liġi dwar il-klima illi qatt ma kienet għaddiet qabel u kienet liġi importanti għaliex fl-aħħar mill-aħħar irridu ikunna liġijiet b'saħħithom biex naraw illi nbidlu dak li forsi imdorrin bih. Għanna bħalissa pakkett leġislattiv importanti ħafna, l-Fit for 55, fejn onorot ħafna li ħankun qed nagħmel il-parti tiegħu wkoll bħala wieħed mir-rapporteurs fuq wieħed mill-punti leġislattivi ta' dan il-fajl għaliex irridu naraw illi ikonna pjaneta aktar b'saħħtu. Pjaneta aktar b'saħħtu jfisser illi kull wieħed waħda minna nkunu iktar b'saħħitna. U permettuli nagħmel punt żgħir għaliex qegħdin Malta, gżira f'nofs il-Mediterran, gżira mdawra mill-baħar. U ħafna drabi fid-diskussjoni li jkollna anke fuq livell Ewropew ninsew il-punt tal-baħar għaliex il-baħar huwa importanti fil-ġlieda kontra t-tibdil tal-klima għaliex il-baħar huwa riżorsa li għandna nużaw iktar. Il-baħar jista' iwassal sabiex naraw illi ikonna carbon sinks, dawk li jinġibet il-karbonju minnhom, però apparti minn hekk ukoll jipproduċi l-ossiġenu li għandna bżonn kull waħda minna biex inkunu nistgħu ngħixu għaliex mingħajru ma ngħixux. U allura inħares il qudiem biex nisma' minn għandkom x'inhuma l-ħsibijiet tagħkom dwar il-futur tal-pjaneta tagħna u ejja naraw illi kull wieħed waħda minna mhux biss nitkellmu, mhux biss nivvotaw nbidlu liġijiet fuq livell Ewropew, però kull waħda minna nbidlu l-mentalità tagħna ħalli nkunu nistgħu nsalvaw il-pjaneta għalina l-koll. Grazie.
So I think I can start speaking. Are we doing enough? I mean, that's a very tough question. But what I can say is that for us as Social Democrats, the European Green Deal has been at the core of our campaign. Before this new parliament was elected, Frans Timmermans campaigned for a social climate deal, because we cannot have climate justice without social justice. For me, it's very important. As being Dutch, there's a saying where we state that going green while your bank account is red is not possible. So, if not now, the Social Democrats have to be in the core of climate policies in the EU, because we wanted to make sure that this change that is needed, it's very needed to be done. The path towards that change is also very important. We need to make it a social, fair, justice path. Because it cannot be that the burdens of climate change will only be allocated to the people with the least income, or the people that already have a very hard job making ends meet. So, are we doing enough? What we've done, starting the campaign saying, okay, if you give the trust in us, if you vote for the Social Democrats, we will come with a plan that will guarantee a social transition and will guarantee the Paris Agreement. And that plan is now starting to form. We, as Social Democrats, have been at the core of those decisions. One of my predecessors, Miriam Dalli, was our vice president on the European Green Deal and has been always very active in making sure that climate justice and social justice go hand in hand. Now the European Commission has presented the plan, the Fit for 55. We, as Social Democrats, are assessing those plans, are looking where maybe we want to be a bit more ambitious, but maybe sometimes also have to see whether the burden of climate change is distributed in a fair way. That will be the core principle in the upcoming months. Will it be enough? I don't know. I hope it will be enough. We will make sure that it will be enough. We will also make sure that it's affordable, because both the burdens but also the profits related to climate change, because there are also opportunities for businesses, for member states, need to be shared in a fair way. In between, what we've also made sure as social democrats in the climate law that we've put in place in Europe, we've made sure that there will be an independent scientific board that will assess the plans, that will make sure to what extent the plans are in line in reaching the Paris Agreement. But again, for us, the core principle will both the burdens, but also the profits related to climate change, will they be fairly distributed within member states, but especially also between member states? Because social justice needs to go hand in hand with climate justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Cyrus. Thank you, Mohammed. I invite you to stay here on stage because I'm sure we'll have a lot of interventions on this topic. Does anyone want to intervene on this issue? Raise your hands if you do, please. I see one over there behind, yes. If you could just state your name and your organization where you're coming from. A mic is coming to you.
Hello, good evening. Hello. Hi, good evening, and thank you for welcoming us here. So yes, as this external group meeting shows, the future of Europe is not exclusively decided in Brussels. It is above all coordinated by the respective future plans of the constituent parts which make it up. I am here representing Audish, a non-political environmental NGO specifically set up by young Gozatans pushed by current realities to fight for the preservation of Gozo. Gozo might be a teeny tiny island region of the EU, but it is no less significant to this end. Now, the element of active participation in Malta is very strong. Public political consultations are both regular and broad. However, listening to the people, promising action, and then only effecting some cosmetic change, that is worse than an insult to our intelligence. This is particularly manifested where the environment is concerned. Ursula von der Leyen recently noted that the recovery plan of Malta is one of the greenest that the European Commission has received. And that is indeed so in terms of Malta's climate neutrality targets. And this is all very promising and highly laudable. But this greenest of plans comes from an island which day in, day out becomes less green. This greedy over-construction has taken over. Sadly, parts of Malta have already been wasted. As we speak, Gozo is under threat too. New questionable development plans still being okayed and past policies, planning policies, still being left in place. So what we're calling for is a radical overhaul in planning policy rather than the mere greenwashing of Malta, which I'm sure is also applicable to several other member states of the EU. Several Maltese lately have been feeling a little bit orphaned by the endemic type of Maltese socialism, especially in the field of the environment, and that's definitely a big pity. My 2 minutes are up, probably, not enough to change anything, but enough to stress that Malta's and Gozo's time is up too. How can we, as Maltese and Gozatans, hope and plan for the future of a greener Europe when we lack these at home? How can we aspire to save the planet if, on the local level, we might not be doing enough to save Malta and Gozo? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention. I will take all the interventions at one go, and then I will take your replies later on. Does anyone else want to make an intervention? I see one on this side. If we can just get a mic to her, please. May I remind you to state your name and the organization you are from?
Hello, Alicia Bujaya Said. I am an advisor for fisheries within the Ministry for Fisheries and Agriculture in Malta. I would like to thank the Social Democrat Group for organizing this citizen engagement. As a social scientist, I really believe in the need of engagement when it comes to policy making. So I believe that such engagements would really be necessary also with the fishing and farming communities, which I believe tonight are not present with us. So I would like to make some points on these two subjects. As a social scientist in my research, I constantly find together with my colleagues that the common fisheries policy, for example, is mostly focused on the conservation and the economic efficiency of the sectors, which gives a lack of space for the social pillar to feature. So I believe that the future of Europe, to link with what Mohammed said about social justice, I think we really need to see policies which are embedded on the pillars of social justice. I think even the fact that sustainable development, we speak a lot about sustainable development, but the social element, I think, really needs to be figured into European policies in this regard. So even now, the way forward to the European Green Deal and the farm to fork strategy, I think it really needs the citizens, the farming and the fishing communities to be part of the conversation about conservation. Because after all, the policies that will be implemented will have an effect on the future of these sectors. If we were to look at the statistics, we would recognize that the aging population of both fishing and farming communities is a problem around Europe. So we really need to put social justice as the central pillar of the forthcoming Green Deal and the farm to fork strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I see another intervention from the floor. Again, remind you to state your name and the organization you're coming from before your intervention.
Hi, it's Steve Alul. I come from the financial industry, from the boring financial industry, but I moved into sustainable development. And today I'm an advisor to Mr. Dalli, who is pretty much driving this Green Deal idea here in Malta. And I stress on the word idea because it really and truly, I believe, answers one important question, which was also driven by Alfred Sant earlier on. The question of how to do things. And as socialists, as progressives, we really need to think about how to actually implement the great ideas we have. The idea of having a greener country, the idea of having a greener Europe, a more social Europe. And one way of doing it, in my very, very humble, very, very modest opinion, is to put our money where our mouth is. One way of actually bringing change, in my opinion, is to ensure that the forces of the financial industry, of the corporate industry, are put in the right place, with the right tools, with a positive attitude. And I think if we look back at periods where Europe was facing an important crisis, the sovereign crisis back in 2015. European institutions only took few months to actually come up with a plan which implied that we spend as a region something to the tune of 80 billion euros every single month to save financial institutions. Faced with a crisis, Europe can stand up. So we're faced with a crisis today, and my feeling is that there is this lack of boldness, there is this lack of materiality, there is this lack of understanding that green issues need to be tackled with the same level of boldness, with the same level of conviction that we've tackled the financial crisis. First of all, we really need to look into situations where the Corporate Social Responsibility Directive, the CSRD, is not just spoken about at European institutions. In my opinion, we really need to implement. We've been discussing this since 2017, it's 2021, and there's still a lot of talk being made about it. We're looking into implementation in 2024. Okay, that to me, that doesn't seem to be managing a crisis. To me, that seems a lot of very important discussions, but now we really need to implement. And I would focus our attention on the environmental impact that a lot of companies are having on our environment, but also on the social impact. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I don't want to have this discussion when she's my age, and perhaps she might be in a situation where she's paid 14% less for every labor hour compared to her male colleagues. This is the situation today. And sustainable development is also about pushing forward social agenda. And I think this is something which we really need to move forward. And one last point, which I think both Cyrus and Mohammed mentioned, and I think it's very, very important, is to ensure that carbon pricing is fine. Carbon pricing is great. But let us make sure that carbon pricing doesn't allow for a social pushback from the customers, from the people. Okay, it's great to ensure that carbon prices are paid by the big polluters. It's fine to change the mentality, Cyrus, as you mentioned. It's very important to change the mentality. But we also need to ensure that the people are not placed in a situation where we force them to pay for something without giving them an alternative. And I think this is the right way to tackle it. So I thank you both, and I thank pretty much everyone who spoke before me, because the points that have been raised were very good. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take your feedback because we saw a lot of important contributions, and then I will go to the fellow who is sitting over there. We touched upon green economy, a lot of different issues. Your take on both of them.
Shall I take the Gozo one, or will you take it?
I can take the Gozo one and some others as well. I'm very happy that we have also people with us from Gozo, from all across the Maltese Islands, which is something fantastic, and from all across Europe, which is even better. But I start with the last point made, and I think that it is very important to make sure that, yes, all of us change mentalities, but in this changing of mentality, we make sure that no one is left behind, because at the end of the day, that is at the heart and at the core of what we believe in as socialists and democrats, and we need to really make sure that no one is left behind. And I think that Malta can be seen as an example of this. As our Gozitan friend mentioned earlier on, not everything is perfect. We have many faults, definitely, and we can discuss planning policies. But I think one of the major things that we did, and I believe we have done in a very good way, is the change in the generation of electricity in this country. Till a few years ago, we used to generate electricity by using heavy fuel oil. Today, we use gas. And in this change, with all the change in infrastructure, with all the expenses that came with it, the customers, the citizens of Malta and Gozo did not incur 1 single cent more than what they used to pay before, but their electricity bills were reduced by 25%. And I think that is the way that we need to look forward, even in our legislation at EU level, when we're discussing the new Green Deal, and apart from that, the Fit for 55 package, we need to make sure that whatever changes we make to have a greener planet and a cleaner planet, those changes should not be a burden upon those who can't take those burdens on themselves. So I think that is one important factor, but at the same time, we need to see that those who pollute pay a fair price for the pollution that they make. And I think that that is important. I'll quickly go on to the question of planning. I'm very happy to see that we are reviewing a number of policies at the moment over here, whether it is the rural policy, for instance, which I believe is very important. It is crucial for Gozo, but it is also crucial for other parts of the Maltese Islands. And I would really like to see the participation of NGOs, of citizens, as we are doing here today, listening to what citizens have to say. This has to be done, and I urge you to make your voice heard. I think that if all of us speak up, stand up, we can bring the changes that we really want to see. We have done this in the past on many other fields. I speak of civil liberties, where I was very much active in. No one believed 10 years ago that we would have an equal Malta when it comes to LGBTIQ rights. No one believed that with a socialist government we would arrive where we are today in equality. But we stood up, we spoke, we took action, and it happened. And I think that it is our turn now to do the same for the environment. The planning policies that we have been coming from a very long time. They have been changed through different processes, but I think we need to have the biggest change now. And it is each and every one of us that has to stand up to do that.
Thank you. Mohammed, what is your take on this?
Yeah, the problem with change is it always reminds me of this cartoon that I've seen on the internet. It's when I ask people who wants change, then usually everyone is very active and let's change, come on. The second question is then who wants to change first, and then no one replies. That's the biggest problem that we have now. If everyone's sense, if the urgency that the climate crisis is causing is felt by politicians, then I don't think there will be a problem. When the dikes broke in the Netherlands in 1953, we spent an equivalent of 20% of GDP to make sure that we had a Delta plan on the table, to make sure that those kind of, that we are better protected against the sea. 20%. If we would calculate it to let's take a similar share to tackle the climate crisis, I don't think we will reach that amount, and I don't think it's necessary. So I think we are looking at the climate crisis from a collective perspective. I don't want to individualize, to make it an individual thing. You know, we have to solve it collectively, and we have the plans on the table. We will make sure before, let's say, the end of next year, that the Fit for 55 package will be a balanced package and will create a system change. But I also think that we need to be a bit more ambitious. We need to look further than placing some PV panels. We need to see to what extent we can make our European industry the most sustainable, most productive industry in the world. And it is possible, because there will be a day that those LNG sites that I saw when we flew in, they need to be replaced by something. Maybe we can be a bit more ambitious there. Let's see whether we can create a reality related to hydrogen, also for Malta. Because the problem is that the costs of doing nothing are being seen today. We see the electricity prices increasing. And the question is this the all-time high, or will we break a record today, or tomorrow again, or next week, or next year? These costs are larger than the climate costs needed to create the system change. If politicians start realizing that, then I think that will be the starting moment to, not debate about it. Climate change should become apolitical. We should have a debate on the road towards a climate neutrality. There we can have a change. But let's create an action. It can create new jobs for us. It can create new opportunities. It will decrease our dependence from countries like, let's say, the Middle East and Russia. This is something we really need in the EU. So I'm saying, if I ask who wants to change, next time, all of us should answer, we want to change. Yes?
Thank you, Mohammed. I will take the question from the gentleman who has the mic in his hand. Again, introduce yourself and the organization you represent, please.
Nsalmilkom, Lukas Mikallef, President tal-Federazzjoni Kaċċaturi Nassaba Konservazzjonisti. Fil-ftuħ tal-messaġġ tal-President ta' din il-konferenza semma li flimkien nkunu b'saħħitna. Sta nkunu b'saħħitna biex niġġieldu tibdil fil-klima, nkunu b'saħħitna biex nħaddru aktar l-Ewropa, nkunu b'saħħitna biex nimplementaw proġetti jistgħu jgħinu wkoll konservazzjoni. Biss sfortunatament qed naraw li minn nies li forsi jħadnu opinjoni estrema iridu jeskludu mis-soċjetà Ewropea il fuq minn 7 miljun kaċċatur, 7 miljun kaċċatur li ħadnu manifest ta' biodiversità tal-fuq minn 500 proġett li fosthom għandna tlieta propju implementati f'Malta, ukoll dil-ġimgħa ħadna award tiegħu ta' wieħed minnhom. Irridu nħadnu flimkien dak li aħna għandna għal qalbna. Jista' jkun dak li jkun ma jaqbilx mal-prattika li nħadmu aħna. Biss żgur naqblu li rridu ambjent aħjar milli għandna. Żgur li flimkien uniti nistgħu nirreġeneraw l-abitati, nippreservaw l-abitati, nissalvagwardjaw l-abitati li għandna. Barra minn hekk, aħna bdejna viżjoni biex li għandna l-bib tagħna miftuħ għal kulħadd, il-bib tagħna huwa miftuħ għal kull entità, għal kull individwu, għal kull parti interessata fis-soċjetà tagħna u żgur li flimkien nistgħu nħallu ambjent aħjar milli għandna llum għall-futur ġejjieni. Grazzi.
Thank you very much. Any final concluding remarks from Cyrus or Mohammed? Concise as possible so we can move on to the next panel.
I'll just speak a bit on what Lucas just said, and I think it's a very important point because at the end of the day, I know FKNK and I know the great work they do for biodiversity. It is true that hunting can be quite an issue at times, but and one can take it just from one perspective. But knowing you and knowing the work that you're doing over here, I know what importance you give to biodiversity here in Malta, but not only, even in the European organization that you represent your organization in. And I think that this is what we need, a balance in all that we do. You fight for the right of hunters, and each and every one of us can understand that, but at the same time, you're very strong in implementing changes in order to enhance and give a bigger push for biodiversity. In the European Union at the moment, we have a biodiversity strategy for 2030, and I thank you for being part of it, because I know that you're contributing to it and speaking about it. And it is in the sense that such important, dialogues like these that we have today are very important, because it brings every one of us together on different sides of the spectrum so that we can decide together our common future, and that is important. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your interventions. So far, we've spoken about citizen engagement, the climate emergency, and now we'll be moving on to the role of youth in Europe. As one of the speakers of today said, youths are the leaders of today and of tomorrow. So are we tapping into their full potential at the moment in Europe? How can we engage more young people in the Conference on the Future of Europe? For this topic, I would like to invite Josiane Kutayar, Maltese MEP, to kick off this discussion.
Thank you, Rebecca. And a warm welcome to the foreigners amongst us, those who are physically with us here, but also those who are digitally connected. Merhaba, we say in Maltese. Mohammed would understand that for sure, and others would, because our language, our unique language, has an Arabic basis mixed with Italian and English influence. And that's the beautiful of diversity. And I will now be switching to Maltese, the language which I was taught firsthand when I was born. U illum nixtieq nindirizza lilkom żgħażagħ hawn preżenti fostna, jiena u Simon konna flimkien mingħand is-soru fil-kinder u l-pre-kinder, il-primarja, s-sekondarja u l-università. U min qatt kellu jgħidilna l-snin wara konna ħankunu hawnhekk flimkien nitkellmu magħkom intom li qed issegwuna anke online minn madwar l-Ewropa dwar il-futur tal-Ewropa. U dan hija mistoqsija importanti ħafna. Kelliema qabli tkellmu dwar l-importanza li nistaqsu. Iva, essenzjali li nistaqsu. U l-mistoqsija joħti l-erf kif ngħidu bil-Malti. Fir-rigward jiena nħeġġitkom bħalissa għandna l-konferenza tal-futur tal-Ewropa għaddejja. U forsi uħud minnkom semaw bija u oħrajn mhux biżżejjed, u għalhekk inħeġġitkom li tidħlu online tistaqsuna jien anke bħala membru tal-plenarja fih dan id-delegazzjoni Malti għar-rappreżentanta tas-Soċjalisti, nitlobkom ukoll li tkellmuna jekk għandkom xi mistoqsijiet jew suġġerimenti. U fir-rigward huwa importanti li meta nitkellmu dwar konsultazzjonijiet, l-ewwel qabel kollox irridu nagħmluhom inklusivi. Aħna soċjalisti u nirringrazzjakom ukoll bħala grupp politiku li għażiltu propju lil pajjiżna li minkejja li huwa fil-periferija jrid ikun fiċ-ċentru ta' din id-diskussjoni u intom iż-żgħażagħ tistgħu tgħinuna. Iż-żgħażagħ mhumiex biss u maħniex biss il-futur kif inħobbu ngħidu, iżda anke il-preżent. Bħalissa attwalment dil-konferenza qed tpoġġikom fiċ-ċentru tagħha u fiċ-ċentru ta' diskussjoni. U meta nitkellmu fuq inklusività, nitkellmu fuq inklusività vis-à-vis persuni li ġejjin minn backgrounds differenti, minn postijiet differenti, mill-periferija, minn gżejjer bħal Għawdex li jaffaċċjaw l-insularità doppja. U anke hawnhekk jiena nħeġġeġ kull min hu involut f'daw id-diskussjonijiet kemm membri tal-plenarja bħalu bħal Ministru Abela hawnhekk u oħrajn biex meta norganizzaw daw it-tip ta' diskussjonijiet, daw it-tip ta' konsultazzjonijiet u x-relatat mal-konferenza tal-futur tal-Ewropa mal-qoddim, l-Ewropa verament trid tmur f'kull rokna ta' reġjuni differenti fil-partijiet differenti għax għandna ħabta li meta niġu għal konsultazzjonijiet u attivitajiet nħobbu nżommu għaċ-ċentru għal-bliet. Iżda persuna minn Marsa Xlokk u minn Nadur u minn Taslima kif semma anke qabel, il-kol kemm aħna rridu naraw illi nilħuhom. U nilħu biss mhux biss il-daw il-persuni ma anke dawk li m'għandhomx teknoloġija. Għax jekk għandna persuna li huwa ħaddim tal-id, jekk għandna persuna li ma jaħdimx f'Belt jew ċentru f'Pariġi jew Berlin u m'għandux livell għoli ta' akkademja, xorta waħda dak il-persuna huwa Ewropew daqsna u Malti wawċi daqsna u rridu importanti nikkonsultawhom ukoll. U għal daqstant iva, dak is-sajjiet għaliex jasemmit iktar kmieni, dak is-sajjiet dak il-bidwi, dak il-kaċċatur, dak il-nassab, dak il-professjonist, dak iż-żagħżugħ il-koll importanti li nikkonsultawhom. U nafu li min ġej mir-rural u minn postijiet li ma tantx jiġu konsultati normalment ikunu iktar xettiċi viżavi il-proġett Ewropew u rridu nilħu lilhom ukoll. Għax ma nistgħux nitkellmu biss ma' minu Ewropew konvent bħalna li qegħdin hawn, probabbli ħafna minna, iżda rridu nitkellmu ma' dawk li għadhom xettiċi u nindirizzaw il-mistoqsijiet il-kbar li hemm fuq l-ambjent, fuq l-aspett diġitali, l-qalbit kbar li rridu nagħmlu lil kollegi hawnhekk tkellmu u se jitkellmu dwarhom. Iżda wkoll sfidi oħrajn ta' inklusività, irrispettivament mill-orjentazzjoni sessuali, irrispettivament minn fejn ġej, irrispettivament mill-ġeneru. U hawnhekk illum ukoll jiena nerġa' nħeġġiġkom. Inaqdu magħna f'dal messaġġ li qed inwasslu f'dil konferenza u jiena nixtieq nistidinkom biex twasslu l qudiem idea ta' kif dal-proċess nistgħu verament nagħmluh konsultattiv u effettiv. Nilqa' l-fatt li l-Kummissjoni Ewropea semmiet li ħajkun hemm anke sena dedikata għaż-żgħażagħ u dan huwa sinjal politiku importanti. Imma immur ukoll għall punti li qalu l-kelliema ta' qabli. Sinjali pożittivi fil-politika, il-diskors politiku huwa importanti li jsir b'mod pożittiv, imma fl-aħħar mill-aħħar aħna accountable għal poplu illi tellana, accountable għal ċittadini illi tellawna u rridu naraw illi verament inwasslu r-riżultat. U viżavi iż-żgħażagħ hawnhekk bħala wkoll politikanta żagħżugħa kultant inħoss li ikun hemm momenti fejn l-Unjoni Ewropea jew inkella membri stati jew inkella organizzazzjonijiet jistidnu żgħażagħ imma hemm l-element ta' tokenism kultant. Palma jidħol element ta' tokenism kultant fejn jidħol il-bilanċ fil-ġeneri. Iżda iż-żgħażagħ ma nistgħux biss ninvolvuhom fl-aħħar minuta, jew flaqa, jew nieħdu selfie, jew ritratt magħhom biex ta' parsi dawn huma involuti, ma żgħażagħ iridu jkunu hemm fil-bidu tal-proċess ta' meta nibdew kwalunkwa konsultazzjoni, iridu jkunu magħna f'dal vjaġġ tal-konferenza l-futur tal-Ewropa u naraw ukoll il-messaġġi li ħajwaslu naraw kif irridu nimplementawhom b'mod effettiv. Għalhekk għejnuna intom huwa ta' pjaċir li qiegħda magħkom hawnhekk nisma' minn għandkom u komplu da dialogu magħna l-koll biex verament nagħmlu Ewropa li hija iktar soċjali flimkien. Grazzi.
Thank you, Josiane, for your intervention. I invite you to stay on the floor with us when we have more contributions. I'm seeing the Minister, Carmela Bella, who is the Minister responsible for social dialogue here in Malta. So I invite you to do your contribution as well. May I remind you to keep it as concise as possible due to time constraints.
Thank you very much. Lejla tajba l-kulħadd bħala rappreżentant tal-Gvern Malti fuq din il-konferenza tal-futur tal-Ewropa. U għapjaċir tiegħi l-flimkien mal-Aġenzija li taqa' taħt ir-responsabilità tiegħi minn Mejju law bdejna numru ta' konsultazzjonijiet. U llum rajt statistika fejn il-kontribuzzjonijiet minn Malta huma fuq quddiem net fejn il-Maltin qed jagħtu il-veduti tagħhom fuq x'Ewropa jridu fil-futur. Ħadd gost nara wkoll imma li fost il-kontribuzzjonijiet tal-Maltin 42% minnhom ġejjin miż-żgħażagħ. Iż-żgħażagħ ikun hemm min jirreferi għalihom bħala il-futur. Però iż-żgħażagħ huma aktar minn hekk. Iż-żgħażagħ huma il-preżent. Iż-żgħażagħ huma dawk li llum għandhom l-opinjoni tagħhom, li llum diġà jaqsmu magħna il-ħsibijiet u l-ambizzjonijiet tagħhom. U allura jiena nistieden kif għamlet il-kollega tiegħi Josiane li jkun hemm aktar żgħażagħ, aktar tfal. Kenna esperjenza ftit tal-ġimgħat ilu fejn eżerċizzju li sar waqt skola sajf f'pajjiżna, iż-żgħażagħ daħlu għal proġett li mbagħad ippreżentaw dan il-proġett, ir-riżultat ta' dan il-proġett dwar x'ixtiequ jaraw fil-futur tal-Unjoni Ewropea. Waħda mill-ambizzjonijiet kienet propju l-ambjent. Smajna diversi interventi diġà fuq l-ambjent, il-ħolma tagħhom li l-ambjent mhux biss nitkellmu fuqu imma inwettqu fil-prattika dak li ngħidu. U naħseb waħda mill-affarijiet li l-Unjoni Ewropea trid tikkonsidra wkoll u aħna l-Istati membri huwa mhux biss li nitkellmu imma li naġixxu. Li naqsu l-burokrazija mhux biss f'pajjiżna imma fl-Unjoni Ewropea. Li niddeċidu malajr u nwettqu b'ħeffa akbar. Ħaġa oħra li tinteressa anke liż-żgħażagħ hija li npoġġu li l-bniedem fiċ-ċentru ta' kull deċiżjoni. A people-centered approach. Dak huwa xi ħaġa li ħareġ sissa bil-konsultazzjoni maż-żgħażagħ. Mhux il-politiċi, mhux il-burokratiċi, imma n-nies. Li n-nies li żgħażagħ iħossu li d-deċiżjoni li qed jittieħdu qed jolqtuhom direttament fil-ħajja tagħhom ta' kuljum. U l-aħħar ħaġa nixtieq insemmi għax naħseb il-ħin qed jgħaddi huwa dwar mhux biss li nitkellmu fil-komunitajiet tagħna, fil-lokalitajiet tagħna, fil-pajjiż tagħna, fl-Unjoni Ewropea tagħna, imma din l-Unjoni Ewropea tagħna fejn se tkun qiegħda fil-futur fid-dinja globali li tnejxu fiha. X'rwol l-Unjoni Ewropea ser ikollha mhux biss lokalment, mhux biss bħala pajjiżi, imma wkoll fid-dinja. Aħna kuntenti nitkellmu biss bejnietna, jew għandu jkollna influenza akbar x'qed jiġri fir-reġjuni madwarna. Wet ngħid dan u nsemmi dal-eżempju u nieqaf. L-immigrazzjoni teffettwa ħafna nies. Tajjeb u inqas tajjeb. U aħna bħala pajjiż li ninsabu fil-periferija tal-Unjoni Ewropea, din iż-żgħażagħ iħossuha. U allura ma nistgħux nitkellmu biss fuq dan is-suġġett bejnietna, imma rridu nitkellmu wkoll ma' min qiegħed fir-reġjun tagħna. Aħna fil-Kastana fil-Mediterran, però ċertament pajjiżi oħrajn jitkellmu fuq ir-reġjun tagħhom. U kull wieħed waħda minna għandu jinteressana mir-reġjuni rispettivi tagħna għax hekk aħna Unjoni waħda. Jekk aħna nitkellmu fuq is-solidarjetà irdu nwettquha fil-prattika. U allura l-appell tiegħi hu li iva aktar żgħażagħ jipparteċipaw, aktar ċittadini b'mod ġenerali jipparteċipaw u fil-ġimgħat u fix-xhur li ġejjin permezz ta' din l-opportunità li qed tagħtina l-Unjoni Ewropea biex kull wieħed waħda minna ngħidu tagħna nħeġġeġ aktar żgħażagħ biex jgħidu l-opinjoni tagħhom huwa dmir tagħna li aħna nagħtu każ. Grazzi.
Thank you, Minister. It's so nice to hear Maltese being speaking during a European event. I see someone with a mic over here. I remind you to introduce yourself, the organization that you come from, and also to keep your intervention as concise as possible.
Grazzi Rebecca, grazzi Ministru, grazzi Onorevoli Kutajjar. Kif jgħid il-Malti ħan nipprova nżomma fil-qosor, kif jista' jkun. Jisimni Jacob Kallus, jgħataw fir-rol tiegħi bħala uffiċjal tal-Avukatura tal-Kunsill Nazzjonali taż-Żgħażagħ. Qiegħed nieħu gost ħafna nisma' diskors li huwa in line ma' fiex nemmnu bħala kunsill li żgħażagħ għandhom ikunu fiċ-ċentru tal-politika, mhux sempliċement kif qalet qabel l-Onorevoli Kutajjar bħala token, imma bħala atturi li aħna din parteċipanti f'dan il-proċess. Dan il-proċess li hu ħajwassal konferenza dwar il-futur tal-Ewropa, mhux dwar il-preżent, dwar il-futur, fejn jridu mmorru bħala kontinent u bħala pajjiż li aħna niffurmaw parti minn dan ir-reġjun. Huwa tajjeb ħafna li ngħidu li saru ħafna passi l quddiem biex iż-żgħażagħ ikollhom iktar parteċipazzjoni fil-politika, kemm fuq livell Ewropew, kemm fuq livell lokali, kif ukoll fuq livell nazzjonali. Nsemmi il-Vot 16, insemmi il-programm LEAD li mmexxi mill-Partit Laburista, nsemmi il-diversi internships u shadowing programs li joffru politikanti kemm hawnhekk kif ukoll fl-Ewropa fejn iż-żgħażagħ ikunu min ikunu għandhom iċ-ċans biex mhux joqogħdu wara u jsegwu imma ikunu parteċipanti fil-proċessi li forsi aħna nieħdu for granted ikunu qegħdin isiru barra minn pajjiżna imma jħallu impatt fuq l-għejxin tagħna. Però mhux kollox huwa wajtu żgħar nafu li għad hemm ostakli. U hawnhekk insemmi settur għal-qalb ħafna, il-settur tal-persuni b'diżabilità u nitkellem bħala persuni li għandi disabilità ma tidirx, invisibli, li forsi fil-għasija libt l-ostakli, kelli ostakli f'ħajti, ma jgħataw. Ħaddieħor għad għandu ostakli qudiemu u dawk in-nies għandhom isibu ġustizzja soċjali f'ħajjithom biex huma jistgħu jkunu hawn magħna biex ikollhom is-sejt tagħhom mhux bħala tokens kif edna ma bħala atturi parteċipanti f'dan il-proċess. U importanti sabiex iż-żgħażagħ partikolarment żgħażagħ li għandhom diżabilitajiet ikollhom l-opportunità biex ilaħħu mal-potenzjal tagħhom, l-ambizzjonijiet tagħhom u l-aspirazzjonijiet tagħhom. U jekk isibu l-bib magħluq fiċċhom dan il-bib irid jinfetaħ. Thank you.
Very much, grazzi ħafna. I see the gentleman over there with a mic in his hand. I also invite Josiane and the Minister to stand up so that the citizens will be able to address you during their interventions.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gianfreda Drus, and I study psychology at the University of Malta. I am here today as a member of the Young People's Forum. I am also a member of Beta Psi and founder of the Facebook group Disability. I would like to start by thanking you all for having me, including the Honorable Josiane Cotayar, who invited me here today. The following are my suggestions for making the conference for the future of Europe as inclusive as possible throughout the entire process. Firstly, at the level of the multilingual digital platform, I would explore the possibility of having a substantial amount of text on screen which is narrated, both when accessing the platform and when submitting suggestions. If possible, I would also implement speech-to-text software within the platform, similar to what is already available in Microsoft Word. This would make the platform accessible to more people in a manner which is representative of the EU population. Secondly, at the level of the European Citizens Panels, I would explore the possibility of having people from all walks of life at each individual panel. This means that different people would be able to talk about different topics, not just the ones that they are assigned. For example, it would be ideal if people with disabilities be present for discussions outside of inclusivity and rights, such as the economy and climate change. Furthermore, in the case of in-person events, inclusivity is important beyond accessibility as well. For instance, it would be ideal if the venue is not segregated according to background, nationality, or physical abilities. For example, it would be ideal if space for wheelchairs are spread across the venue, rather than being condensed in a single area. This is especially important for generating discussions among different kinds of people. Finally, as both a psychology student and a member of Beta Psi, I would like to take this opportunity to appeal for mental health to be a significant topic of conversation when discussing the future of Europe. This is especially important after the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on anxiety, depression, loneliness, and fear. Thank you for listening and for providing me the opportunity to voice my opinions. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you so much and well done. Even the audience loved your intervention. You touched on very important topics, which I believe that both the Minister and Josiane will be able to address. I will take one last intervention on this panel. Please, the floor is yours.
Hello? Okay. Hi, I'm Reb. I'm from LGBTI plus Gozo. I will speak in English because I would like to access every single person in this room. And I had this very big speech prepared for today, but when Mohammed mentioned the idea of change, I changed my mind completely. LGBT people are many times also used as tokens as much as youths are sometimes as well. And youths are, as adults, in need of reassurance, of belonging, of being validated and acknowledged. And I could not sit here and not think about LGBT youths that are in Hungary and also Poland. It is a very emotional topic for me because ultimately one thing that we don't keep in mind is that LGBT rights are built on sand. At any point, they can be taken down by simply one person in government that has a different mentality. So one suggestion that I have for a conference like this is make it a safe space for everyone with different gender identities, sexual orientations to be involved. Have space for people to also mention what are their preferred names and preferred pronouns as well. And ultimately, make it not something that is talked about just in politics as a way for us to get there, but get in touch with the realities of LGBT youths that are also in rural places like in Gozo, because they totally have a different reality than the ones that are in cities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We were hearing a sound. That is the rain. In Malta, it's sunny 365 days a year, except when we are hosting entities from abroad. Josiane, Minister, you're concluding remarks. We touched on a lot of important issues, and I'm sure you have something to address.
No, first of all, thank you very much for your contribution. As I said in my early intervention, we need to have this discussion, keeping people from all walks of life at the center of our discussions, but not for politicians and others to talk about people, but to have a discussion. So I thank you for your, also, Jean-Fred, no, your name, for your suggestions. I would like to take your suggestions and see what we can change even during the course of our discussion on the future of Europe. So when we have these discussions, we will invite people from all walks of life to speak and to say what's really happening to their lives. So when I said a people-centered approach, it's across the board. It's not a question for those who are or feel part of the majority. But we need to talk with, and not only about, people who are felt maybe that they are part of a minority that from time to time, maybe we remember that they exist, but we're not doing enough to make a difference in their lives. So I think the conference on the future of Europe is to change. Mohammed mentioned a lot of change. In fact, even they've had a change in the weather. It was sunny in the morning, in the afternoon became cloudy, now we have the rain. But we need to be ready for change. In fact, we are ready for change because thank God we have a tent here, otherwise we'll... So, and this is the kind of preparedness that we need for a future-proof Europe. Taking everyone on board, not leaving anyone behind. And I said earlier, and I conclude on this, when we speak about youth, when we speak with youth, we must always remember ourselves that youth and the younger generation are not the future, but are the present. The last time that I was at an EBSCO council, actually there was a minister who was saying that the younger generation are the future, future. I said, no. We need only to say that they are the future, but we need to involve them today, and we need to plan today with them, not without them. So it's the same for persons with disability. Nothing about us without us. No, we used to say this saying, and I think it should not be just a saying, but it should be how we really work to make changes. And I think even during these years we made a lot of changes, positive changes. We have much more persons with disability in the workplace. Conditions of work are getting better, and I'm responsible also for conditions of work. So definitely this topic should be also at the heart and the center of the conference on the future of Europe, because after all, it's what we have in our pockets that matter, how we move our family forward, irrespective of what kind of family we have. And this is another point that was mentioned as well. So I think there is a big agenda, but the big agenda is not for just people that will have a microphone to speak about, but every single citizen in Europe should have this big agenda on the future of Europe.
And I start by putting your mind at rest, Minister, that the Socialist group at the European Parliament is working hard towards workers' rights. And yes, indeed, it's a very important point. Workers' rights and the rights of all, not only of workers, but of all citizens, irrespective of whether they are children, youths, irrespective of whether they form part of a minority or another aspect. And this is very much important. People have to be, yes, at the heart of our agenda, at the heart of our political agenda. And the red heart which the socialists must maintain to continue beating should remain there even with regards to this aspect. And I thank Reb, Jean, and Jacob for their great interventions, as well as the other speakers today. Indeed, if we really believe in change, let's all of us be able to have the flexibility to admit with ourselves where things are not going right. Even if we propose something, we have to be courageous enough to realize that when we consult, there could be other ideas which are even better, which may lead us to change our initial ideas and implement changes. And therefore, to my colleagues here who are also part of the plenary of the Conference of the Future of Europe, to you youths and all those who are following us, let's make the change by also giving our suggestions, whether it's online, and yes, I'm a proud Maltese for having a high participation in Malta on the multilingual platform, but even via oral discussions. Our citizens have the benefit that they can literally talk to us and see us very often. In larger member states, that may be a bit more difficult, but we are very close to the people. And please do take that benefit and speak to your politicians and speak to the policymakers. Do not be afraid, because your ideas are important and sometimes you're much more in touch with the reality out there than we are. And we need to hear from all of you. Thank you, best regards, and let's continue the discussion and the change going. All together it is possible.
Thank you very much. Our next and final topic deals with the digital transition. We're all experiencing it, and I'm sure that most of us cannot even dream of a world without our phone, without our Wi-Fi, or without being connected every second of the day. However, can this be said for everyone? Is the digital transition reaching out to everyone? And that is the question I would like MEP Alex Saliba and MEP Ismail Ertug to answer, and let us know their thoughts on this subject.
L-ewwel nett, il-lejl it-tajjeb. Jiena mhux ħankun qiegħed nibda mill-ewwel billi nitkellem fuq it-tranzizzjoni diġitali għaliex. Għaliex fl-aħħar mill-aħħar illum qegħdin hawnhekk niddiskutu maċ-ċittadini Maltin u Għawċin u anke mal-kollegi tagħna barranin li jingħaqdu magħna wkoll minn madwar l-Unjoni Ewropea kollha, imma din hawnhekk sabiex nagħtu r-risposti tagħna għal dak li qegħdin imexxu l qudiem. U Jean-Fred fl-intervent tiegħu semma il-bżonn li nagħtu każ l-aċċessibilità għal persuni b'diżabilità fis-soċjetà tagħna. U l-grupp politiku tagħna fejn jidħol il-qasam is-settur tal-diżabilità dejjem kien minn ta' quddiem sabiex naraw illi ħadd ma jaqa' lura. U ħafna mill-punti illi Jean-Fred mexxa l quddiem, speċjalment fejn jidħol l-aċċessibilità, fejn tidħol id-diġitalizzazzjoni għal persuni b'diżabilità, ħajkunu wkoll indirizzati f'rapport illi ħajkun qed jiġi vvutat nhar it-tlieta li ġej fil-plenarja tal-Parlament Ewropew, rapport li ħdimt fuqu matul din l-aħħar sena sabiex naraw illi l-ebda persuna b'diżabilitajiet vari ma titħalla taqa' lura. Però il-panel u s-sessjoni illi ħankun qiegħed nindirizza u niftaħ daqsxejn għad-diskussjoni il-lejla hija dik marbuta mal-qasam diġitali, it-tranzizzjoni diġitali. U nixtieq illi nibda dawn il-kelmtejn billi inwieġeb u nistaqsim u nwieġeb żewġ mistoqsijiet. L-ewwel nett. Għalfejn qegħdin fil-politika. U għalfejn dħalt fil-politika fl-aħħar mill-aħħar. Dħalt fil-politika għaliex inħaddan prinċipji soċjal demokratiċi. U ma nistgħu qatt insejħu lilna nfusna soċjal demokratiċi jekk ma nkunux vuċi soda, vuċi b'saħħitha għal ħaddiema tagħna, speċjalment l-aktar ħaddiema illi jkunu f'sitwazzjonijiet ta' vulnerabilità. U t-tieni mistoqsija. Nixtiequ fl-aħħar mill-aħħar u għalfejn qegħdin hawnhekk illum, qegħdin hawnhekk illum għaliex nixtiequ illi naraw Unjoni Ewropea aktar relevanti, aktar viċin in-nies. U naħseb id-diskussjoni tal-lejla dik dwar il-futur tal-Ewropa qiegħda twieġeb din il-mistoqsija. U għalfejn qiegħda twieġeb din il-mistoqsija? Għaliex biex l-Unjoni Ewropea tibqa' proġett relevanti, trid tibqa' tisma' dak li jgħidulna ċ-ċittadini, dak li tgħidulna fl-aħħar mill-aħħar intom, kull wieħed u waħda minnkom. U fil-proċess ta' tranzizzjoni diġitali. U l-ġustizzja meta qiegħda ssir din it-tranzizzjoni għandna npoġġu l-ewwel u qabel kollox, ngħid jiena, il-ħaddiema tagħna. U ħankun qiegħed nindirizza 3 kwistjonijiet li għandna fl-aħħar mill-aħħar qudiemna u bħala grupp politiku qegħdin nippruvaw nindirizzawhom u nżommu lill-Kummissjoni Ewropea accountable sabiex fl-aħħar mill-aħħar naraw li verament ikonna ġustizzja ma' dawn il-ħaddiema. L-ewwel nett Alla ħares ma kenniex din it-tranzizzjoni diġitali, dan l-avvanz fit-teknoloġija, meta millum għal-għada spiċċajna f'sitwazzjoni ta' pandemija. Il-ħaddiema tagħna kieku ma kenniex l-għodod diġitali kienu jispiċċaw jitilfu l-għajxin tagħhom, jitilfu l-postijiet tax-xogħol tagħhom. Però permezz tal-għodod diġitali kellna wieħed minn kull 3 ħaddiema fuq bażi Ewropea illi setgħu jibqgħu jaħdmu minn ġewwa djar tagħhom u ma tilfux ix-xogħlijiet tagħhom. Però dawn ir-realtajiet qegħdin joħolqu sfidi ġodda għal ħaddiema tagħna. Għal dawk l-iktar ħaddiema b'mod speċjali li ftit li xejn ikollhom leħen. Dawk il-ħaddiema li minħabba dawn it-tip ta' realtajiet, minħabba din in-nuqqas ta' protezzjoni illi għandhom qegħdin jispiċċaw jaffaċċjaw abbużi. U hawnhekk qegħdin nitkellmu fuq dritt illi il-grupp politiku tagħna, l-grupp tas-Soċjalisti u d-Demokratiċi, imbotta u għadu qiegħed jimbotta ta' kuljum id-dritt ta' skonnessjoni, id-dritt tar-right to disconnect. Dritt li huwa fundamentali f'dinja diġitali, f'dinja fejn aktar u aktar ħaddiema qed jaħdmu bi flessibilità minn ġewwa djar tagħhom, minn postijiet differenti u mhux mill-uffiċċju tradizzjonali li qabel konna mdorrijin ngħixu bih. U allura dawn it-tip ta' ħaddiema għandu jkollhom id-dritt illi fil-ħin liberu tagħhom u di xi ħaġa illi missirijietna jiena ġej ukoll minn familja tal-ħaddiema ġġieldu għaliha drittijiet bażiċi. Il-massimu ta' ħin illi kull wieħed u waħda minna kull ħaddiem għandu jaħdem sabiex ma jiġix sfruttat. Il-ħin tal-mistrieħ tiegħu li huwa tant importanti sabiex nissalvagwardjaw is-saħħa mentali ta' kull ħaddiem tagħna. Tkellimna wkoll kellna mistoqsijiet fuq is-saħħa mentali. Kif jista' jkun illi konna saħħa mentali ta' kwalità għal ħaddiema tagħna meta jkollok ħaddiema illi jiġu trattati jisom xi robots. Jaħdmu daqs illi kieku kienu xi magna. U hemmhekk ikonna ħaddiema li jiġu f'istat ta' vulnerabilità u għalhekk huwa importanti illi dan id-dritt jidħol mill-aktar fis possibbli u f'pajjiżna għandna x-xorti illi qabel ma jingħalaq il-proċess fuq livell ta' Parlament, livell ta' Ewropew, tal-Kummissjoni Ewropea għandna dan id-dritt ir-right to disconnect illi diġà beda jingħata lil ħaddiema kollha taċ-ċivil minn ftit tal-ġimgħat ilu. Il-Ministru responsabbli mix-xogħol jgħid hawn l-appell tagħna u tal-ħaddiema Maltin u Għawċin huwa li r-right to disconnect ma jitgawdix biss mill-ħaddiema tas-settur pubbliku ma wkoll mill-ħaddiema tas-settur privat. It-tieni punt illi nixtieq nagħmel fejn nidħol il-qalba diġitali u l-protezzjoni tal-ħaddiema tagħna. Il-ħaddiema li qegħdin jaħdmu b'teleworking. Għandna sitwazzjoni li fuq bażi Ewropea għandna regoli skaduti. Regoli li ma jirrispecjawx ir-realtajiet illi qegħdin naffaċċjaw illum il-ġurnata. U għalhekk huwa kruċjali illi dawn ir-regolamenti fuq bażi Ewropea jiġu updated fejn fost oħrajn ikollna sitwazzjoni illi ħaddiem ikollu dritt jgħid iwa jiena nixtieq, jiena ma nixtieqx illi naħdem b'telework. Għaliex kif hawn ħaddiema illi jixtiequ jaħdmu minn djar tagħhom sabiex ikollhom aktar flessibilità, hawn ħaddiema li jgħidulek jiena rrid nibqa' naħdem mix-xogħol mill-uffiċċju tax-xogħol tiegħi. U l-aħħar punt li rrid nagħmel huwa il-punt relatat mal-ħaddiema tal-pjattaformi. Id-diġitalizzazzjoni waslet għal sitwazzjoni li jkollna ħaddiema illi jaħdmu f'sitwazzjonijiet u f'realtajiet diġitali li mhumiex dawk tradizzjonali. U dawn ir-realtajiet tal-ħaddiema tal-pjattaformi qegħdin iwasslu għal sitwazzjoni ta' abbużi kbar. Qegħdin naraw ħaddiema illi la jingħataw sick leave, la jingħataw leave, la jingħataw kundizzjonijiet minimi li għal kull wieħed waħda minna huma normali. Imma forsi għaliex dawn il-ħaddiema mhumiex Maltin bħalna. Ngħidu iwa qegħdin jaħdmu forsi b'kundizzjonijiet differenti minna. Dawk ix-xogħlijiet aħna żgur illi ma naslux illi nagħmluhom. U lil dawn il-ħaddiema għandna wkoll il-ħaddiema tal-pjattaformi nagħtuhom dinjità. Għaliex għalina l-ebda ħaddiem ma għandu jiġi sfruttat, l-ebda ħaddiem ma għandu jiġi abbużat. U għalhekk huwa importanti li f'diskussjonijiet bħal dawn ir-realtajiet ta' vulnerabilità, dawn ir-realtajiet li qegħdin jinħolqu ħafna drabi mingħajr ma nintebħu, mingħajr ma nindunaw. Għandhom jiġu indirizzati għaliex huma prioritajiet għal kull ċittadin, kull wieħed waħda minnha, ma fl-aħħar mill-aħħar huma prioritajiet importanti li jiddistingwuna bħala soċjal-demokratiċi, bħala parti minn din il-familja li llum qed hawnhekk taħt din it-tinda. Insellmilkom.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. So many things have been said already, and I'm grateful to Alex that he has mentioned important things. This evening we have heard the two challenges in a nutshell for the future. One of the big challenges, as we said, the Fit for 55, how to green the globe, how to make it CO2 neutral. And the second challenge is, as has been said, the digital world. The digital world, ladies and gentlemen, is not a future issue. It has been said it's in the past, not only on social issues, also the digital issues in the past. We in the European Parliament, we have to do something, and we had done something when it comes to the legislation. Let me emphasize some legislation, or no, let me go one step back. The acceleration of the digital world has been done via the COVID crisis. I think we have seen that. People who never had something to do with computers and laptops, they were obliged or forced to use computers, forced to use WebEx, forced to use Zoom, and so on. And that has shown us that many things, many travels, many CO2 emissions could be saved because of the digital transition. And one important historical person in the US once said, "I have a dream." So I have also a dream. I think we all have dreams. And I want to say, and maybe make an example. We have here colleagues among us who work with me in the Transport Committee, Vera, for example, from the Netherlands, also Josiane. What we want to achieve also is to use this technology, the digitalization, for example, for the autonomous driving. I don't know, have you thought about that once? And I visited 2 weeks ago the International Motor Show, the first time in Munich, in my home region. And compared to the motor shows earlier, 2 years ago in Frankfurt, it's not anymore an issue of how many horsepowers and big cars and fantastic cars. No. Now they have understood, the OEMs, the manufacturers, that the digital world has to be combined with the green world, with the future. And I think the autonomous way could be a big step forward when it comes, as I said, to save CO2 emissions and in particular to make it more convenient as it is. This beautiful city, this beautiful island, think about it, and I've visited and I walked around this yesterday, and I've seen even now too many cars with combustion engines, and we should replace them by electric mobility, connected and green. This is the connection, I would say, once again, to the green world. And as we have described in the European Parliament, the European Union comes up with 3 main legislation, which is the Digital Market Act, the Digital Service Act, and in particular the rule of AI, the artificial intelligence. What is the artificial intelligence? We all know this. This is the main brain behind. And we all know if you want to buy something online, yeah, you take your computer and just type in, And after this, by random, we always get the same advertisement. When you want to buy, I don't know, a machine, a device, and randomly you get all the advertising in the future. So we know that this is also a way or a part of the digitalization which we have to regulate. One has been said by Alex, the right to disconnect, but also we have to regulate this technology, the artificial intelligence behind, which gives us, or which opens up our private world, our private privacy, that has to be also taken into consideration. And finally, let me say, 4 out of 10 adults, they have never used, or they don't have digital experience. Okay, that has been changed with COVID, but even there, even now, we have to do more steps towards that. And 20 years ago, no one knew about, not no one, but you know what I mean, Facebook and Spotify and Apple and Google and all the things were absolutely new, absolutely new. And now the rules, what we have, the existing rules from now, they are from 2000, from the year 2000. That even shows us that we have to modernize and come up with new regulations, and this is ongoing in the European Union. I can tell you that we have to save our planet, and for this we need new technologies. Without new technologies, no climate change will be happening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, both Ismail and Alex. I invite you to stay with me right here. We have a beautiful backdrop. Let's make use of it. It says, "It's your Europe, have your say," and that is exactly what we're doing right now. So I see the lady over there with her microphone. Please state your name and the organization you represent.
Davina Samutili, Floriana Mayer, and I also work in the financial sector. I will speak in Maltese, please. Tul is-snin rajna li l-pajjiżi jagħmlu avvanzi kbar fil-qasam teknoloġiku u koll anki fil-qasam digitali. Fosthom f'setturi ta' infrastrutturali, mediċinali, kif ukoll fil-qasam finanzjarji. Jiena li naħdem fil-qasam finanzjarju għal dawn l-aħħar 15-il sena, rajt avvanzi kbar, rajt ukoll diversi xogħlijiet li qabel kien isir mill-ħaddiem manwali jieħu post il-qasam teknoloġiku. U għalhekk xtaqt inqajjem żewġ punti importanti li nieħdu ħsieb li nissalvagwardjaw il-kundizzjonijiet tal-ħaddiema u fl-aħħar mill-aħħar ukoll naraw li l-ebda ħaddiem ma jiġi imkeċċi mix-xogħol, anzi nisfruttaw opportunitajiet ġodda għal ħaddiema tagħna. Fl-aħħar mill-aħħar xtaqt ukoll insaqsi bħala Unjoni Ewropea x'qed tagħmel sabiex nissalvagwardjaw il-ħaddiema tagħna fl-aħħar mill-aħħar huma sors ekonomiku importanti fil-pajjiżi tagħna. Grazzi.
Thank you very much for your intervention. I will turn over to the young lady on this side for her chance to speak.
Lejla tajba, jiena Cressida Gallia, ekonomista u kandidata wkoll mal-Partit Laburista fuq l-ewwel distrett tal-elezzjoni ġenerali. Nixtieq ngħid li parti ovvjament mill-kors tiegħi tal-ekonomija kelli nagħmel ovvjament żewġ dissertations illi bażikament trattaw ukoll fuq il-tranzizzjoni diġitali. L-ewwel waħda kienet fuq il-Universal Basic Income fejn rajt ovvjament huwa rajta bħala metodu ħanejtek illi ovvjament nistgħu nagħtu wkoll liċ-ċittadini tagħna u l-ħaddiema tagħna minħabba tranzizzjoni digitali minħabba l-impatt ta' tranzizzjoni u t-tieni waħda kienet fuq il-ħaddiema barranin li ġew Malta ġifier l-effett fuq l-ekonomija Maltija kif kulħadd jaf Malta kellha tkabbir ekonomiku bla preċedent u minħabba fek ukoll kellna bżonn nġibu ħaddiema barranin biex jaħdmu Malta wkoll għaliex dħalna f'setturi illi l-ħaddiema Maltin forsi ma kellhomx ħiliet biżżejjed jew kienu għadhom iridu jiġu mħarġa biex inkunu jistgħu jaddattaw il-ħiliet tagħhom għad-domandi illi kien hemm ovvjament minħabba li kien settur ġdid ukoll. U naħseb din hija xi ħaġa importanti illi naraw illi meta hemm ovvjament din għaddejjin minn tranzizzjoni digitali naraw illi l-ħiliet tal-Maltin tal-ħaddiema Maltin jiġu adattati għal domandi li qed nesperjenzaw fis-suq tax-xogħol. Naħseb kulħadd jemmen illi t-tranzizzjoni digitali għandha tkun ġusta u inklusiva u wkoll użata fis-servizz taċ-ċittadin u kulħadd jaf illi l-impatt tat-tranzizzjoni digitali kemm fuq is-soċjetà wkoll fuq ir-relazzjonijiet tax-xogħol qiegħda tikber u ser tkompli tikber. Iżda nafu li tranzazzjoni hija waħda b'ħafna aspetti. L-introduzzjoni tal-AI, tal-intelligenza artifiċjali semma wkoll l-ewwel, il-gig work u koll l-espansjoni fis-swieq digitali qegħdin joħolqu sfidi ġodda kemm għal ċerti industriji wkoll għal kundizzjonijiet tax-xogħol. Allura, din mistoqsija għandha tkun f'dan il-kuntest ta' tranzizzjoni digitali. Kif nistgħu nassiguraw illi tranzizzjoni digitali ma sseħħx għad-detriment ta' drittijiet u kif ukoll tal-kundizzjonijiet tal-ħaddiema. Hemm numru ta' inizjattivi li huma proposti mill-Kummissjoni Ewropea kif nafu biex tassigura illi din it-tranzizzjoni tkun waħda ġusta, bħal pereżempju din naraw li liġijiet tax-xogħol għandhom jiġu adattati wkoll biex jaffaċċjaw sfidi ġodda bħal dawn. Għalkemm l-impatt ta' teknoloġija jista' jkun wieħed pożittiv, nafu li hemm numru kbir ta' impjegati li qegħdin imbeżżajn illi jistgħu jitilfu x-xogħol tagħhom ukoll b'konsegwenza ta' dawn il-bidliet teknoloġiċi. U għalhekk hemm bżonn illi dil-pressjoni u l-ansjetà li qegħdin iħossu dawn il-ħaddiema biex ovvjament itejbu l-impjegabilità tagħhom billi jerġgħu ħarġu jew nkella jtejbu l-ħiliet tagħhom il-famużi reskilling u upskilling, naraw illi dawn ikunu jistgħu ovvjament jindirizzaw mbagħad id-domanda fis-swieq tax-xogħol allura għandna nagħtuhom kull għajnuna u kull metodu li aħna nistgħu nagħtuhom bħal training, edukazzjoni ġifieri anke mill-bidu mis-sekondarja, mill-terzjarja, ġifieri li aħna nkunu nistgħu nofru wkoll korsijiet illi jidħlu f'dawn is-setturi ġodda illi Malta ovvjament qed tidħol fihom ukoll. Ma nistgħux ma nsemmux ukoll l-impatt fuq in-nisa illi n-nisa jkunu aktar vulnerabbli għal din it-tranzizzjoni diġitali għaliex kif nafu il-mara ovvjament toħroġ mill-xogħol tagħha fil-bidu tal-karriera ġeneralment jgħidu hekk biex issir om u għalhekk ovvjament tkun imbagħad aktar diffiċli biex ikollhom aċċess għall programmi ta' ħiliet wara li jerġgħu jidħlu fis-suq tax-xogħol ukoll. Għanna bżon namlu, jena nemmen illi għanna bżon namlu illi s-swiq tagħna u s-soċjetajiet tagħna li kif nafu mhux wieħed, l-unika resource illi għandha Malta huwa n-nies tiegħu. Allura għandna bżonn illi dawn is-soċjetà Maltija u kif ukoll is-swieq tax-xogħol ikunu reżiljenti wkoll għal xokk fil-livell makroekonomiku u l-protezzjoni soċjali wkoll għandha rwol xtilab ukoll. L-indirizzar ta' differenza fil-ħiliet, ir-riforma ta' sistema ta' sigurtà soċjali u kif ukoll it-titjib fis-sitwazzjoni makroekonomika tal-pajjiż jiena nemmen li għandhom jimxu jitfit. Grazzi.
Thank you very much. I will move to this side of the stage today. Please state your name and I remind you to keep your intervention as concise as possible.
Yes. First of all, thank you. I am Miguel Kauki, Policy Officer at Zazah Laburisti, and I speak in English for the benefit of our friends. When futurists back in the 1960s envisaged that a room-sized computer could be turned into a portable device within few decades, people of that generation were in disbelief, worried that society could evolve into being computer dependent. They could not imagine the advancements in technology and how such will radically change our lives and that our children are digital native. Such advancements in technology, as you mentioned, were vital for all of us to adapt to new life conditions as imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. The digital transformation of the world will continue to occur, and it is our duty to prepare ourselves and our respective societies to embrace such transition and make it a fair one, in order to ensure that no one is left behind. Indeed, while such transition presents a number of advantages, namely new opportunities and improvement in the quality of life, it also puts forward a number of challenges. How are we going to close the digital divide and make sure that the most vulnerable in society are reached in this transition? We need to make sure that those without the necessary skills and the necessary devices are given training and reskilling and are able to purchase the technology respectively. Investment in digital infrastructure, education and innovation is key to ensure a fair digital transition. If we envisage a Europe as a safe, healthy, and prosperous and green group of nations which lead in social justice and social solidarity, we must also, for instance, as Alex mentioned, push forward for the introduction of the right to disconnect. Whilst technology has increased flexibility, it has also resulted in less chances to disconnect, badly affecting mental and physical health. Other challenges we must focus on include cybersecurity and data protection. Putting people first and creating opportunities out of the challenges of this transition will help us to prepare Europe for the next generation. Only when we work together, we are able to address common challenges. And I think that at that stage, no one can stop us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have time for 3 more interventions. I will start with the gentleman over here.
Lejla tajba, jena Kert, president tal-Ferazazax fiħdan l-ikbar union li għanna f'Malta, l-General Workers Union. Zewġ punti kol ma semmi l-lejla. L-ewwel punt dwar ir-rispett fejn jidħol sorveljanza u monitoraġġ fil-post tax-xogħol. Bażikament s'issa sfortunatament hawn Malta m'hemmx regoli speċifiċi fuqha. Kull memm li fejn tidħol sorveljanza u monitoraġġ nimxu ma' Data Protection Act. Bażikament dan ifisser li l-employer jista' jagħmel sorveljanza u monitoraġġ fil-post tax-xogħol mingħajr kunsens tal-ħaddiem sempliċement jekk dan ikun rilevanti mhux eċċessiv u mhux intrussiv. Issa aħna li nixtiequ bħala union bażikament li l-ħaddiem ikun jaf b'dan il-monitoraġġ li jkun qed isir, ikun jaf l-iskop għaliex qed isir kif ukoll id-dejta li għandha tinħareġ minnha. It-tieni punt fil-fatt hawnhekk nixtieq infaħħar l-MEP Malti Alexa Ġussaliba fuq il-proposta li ressaq ta' Right to Disconnect, m'hemmx għalfejn nerġa' nirrepeti li semma. Biex nikkonkludi bażikament kull ma nixtieq insemmi dwar l-importanza li dejjem jisqu sħabi tal-union li ninaqdu membri f'union. Bażikament jiena waħdi kapaċi nagħmel biċċa. Jiena u Alex kapaċi nagħmlu biċċtej. Però kieku aħna kollha kemm aħna nkunu membri f'union kapaċi ntejbu l-kwalità tal-ħajja tagħna kollha. Grazzi.
Thank you very much. We'll take the questions from the young lady.
Hi. I'm Julia Balzan. I'm here representing S-Cube, the university's Science Student Society, where we represent all science students studying at the University of Malta. And to just keep my intervention very short, and also since most of what I was about to say has already been pointed out so eloquently, I would just like to remark and highlight the fact that the pandemic has clearly widened the digital divide both in Malta and in Europe in general. And it thus heightened the educational inequalities that were unfortunately already present and that already existed before. My question is this: how can we rest assured in a post-pandemic world, in a post-pandemic Europe, especially as the digital transition progresses, that students and youths, especially those coming from less advantaged socioeconomic backgrounds, are not left behind in light of this inevitable digital transition? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The question will be answered in due course. We'll take our last intervention for this evening.
Hello, okay. I'm Michela Vassalla, and I'm representing the European Studies Organization, which is also a student organization within the University of Malta, representing all European studies students. Obviously, during COVID, everything shifted online, learning, work, and us students, basically, we depended on Wi-Fi every day to learn. And those who work also work remotely. In this day and age, Wi-Fi is a necessity. Not everyone has the same financial background. We might not see poverty out on the streets, but it is still there, and we shouldn't downplay it or pretend it does not exist. There are things that can be done, for instance, forming study groups to help students get a better level of education if they do not have Wi-Fi at home. As you also mentioned, Alex, we could also provide an option for workers to either choose to work online or even from work physically, because not everyone has the necessities to work every day at home. And we are always preaching about the statement leaving no man behind. And at the end of the day, this would be a good time to start preaching, practicing what we preach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alex, Ismail, we've heard from different representatives. We've had mayors, we've had candidates, economists, representatives from trade unions, we've had science students. So we've had a variety of interventions from different backgrounds, but they all touch upon different topics. What's your feedback on this?
I want to respond to the question of this young lady, what the European Union want to do or did already when it comes to the workers' rights and to defend the rights of the workers. For example, as I said, okay, we've been a little bit too technical, I know. The Digital Service Act, which in the core of this, in the heart of this legislation, lays exactly that: how to defend and save the right of the workers. There is an unshakable, I would say, golden rule, which does mean what is existent in the online world must be also ruled in the offline world. For the moment, and we all know we have the devices in our hands. If we are hungry, we order something and the pizza is there in the next 15 minutes. But we should ask us and all the people who are working, do you get the same amount as others working in a pizzeria, or do you have the same pension rights, and so on and so on and so on. Therefore, this is one of our contribution, an important contribution, as I said. And when I'm not wrong, worldwide we are the continent which is the most advanced when it comes to these kind of things. Therefore, I'm optimistic, and together with my comrades from the socialist group, we will be successful. Let me emphasize one issue which should prove that we are serious with this. When I got elected as vice president 2 years ago, the first thing what I did with Alex and with Josie and with all the others was writing down a position paper for us as social democrats on artificial intelligence on the digital issues, what we expect, dignity, right to disconnect, and other issues. I think the socialists and we as social democrats, we've been serious and we are serious in the future, and I'm sure when this legislation has been finalized, we will be very upfront worldwide.
Jena naħseb il-punt ta' tluq m'għandux ikun dak illi sa id-diġitalizzazzjoni ser tkun qiegħda tisraq il-postijiet tax-xogħol tagħna. Jiġifieri id-diġitalizzazzjoni hija proċess naturali illi fl-aħħar mill-aħħar ħadd ma jista' jwaqfu, però mbagħad nistgħu nagħmlu ħaġa waħda. Illi dik huwa d-dmir tagħna, speċjalment aħna il-politiċi fuq livell Ewropew. Dik xi ħaġa li qed jagħmel il-grupp tagħna ta' kuljum milli nippreparaw qafas leġislattiv illi ikun jista' jipprevjeni jew inkella jirremedja numru ta' problemi, numru ta' sfidi illi s-soċjetà tagħna qiegħda taffaċċja minħabba dawn ir-realtajiet diġitali. Mhux inwaqfu d-diġitalizzazzjoni, ma naraw pereżempju illi l-ebda ħaddiem ma jispiċċa jaqa' lura. Naraw illi ma nispiċċawx f'sitwazzjoni illi minflok ikollna ġustizzja fejn tidħol it-tranzizzjoni diġitali, ikollna ħaddiema illi minħabba din l-istess diġitalizzazzjoni jispiċċaw jaqgħu lura. Jispiċċaw kważi ma jibqgħux kompetittivi fid-dinja tax-xogħol. U hemmhekk huwa d-dmir tagħna li naġixxu. Għamilna dan pereżempju kif semma il-kollega Ismail fl-dwar is-servizzi diġitali fejn hemmhekk rajna illi nipproteġu u nissalvagwardjaw lil min jixtri fuq bażi online, lil ħaddiema tagħna, lil żgħażagħ tagħna, lil kull wieħed u waħda minnkom illi tkunu qegħdin tużaw il-pjattaformi diġitali bħal Facebook, bħal Instagram, bħal Twitter, affarijiet pjattaformi li saru part integrali mill-ħajja tagħna, u naraw illi fil-waqt li dawn il-pjattaformi jibqgħu importanti sabiex nikkomunikaw mal-ħbib tagħna, sabiex nibbukjaw il-holiday tagħna, sabiex naqsmu ir-ritratti tagħna mal-familji tagħna, mal-ħbib tagħna. Imma però naraw illi pereżempju l-proċessi tal-intelligenza artifiċjali f'dawn l-istess applikazzjonijiet ma jkunux qegħdin iwasslu għal sitwazzjoni illi jinvadu id-dritt tal-privatezza tagħna. Jiena nistaqsikom, kieku jkollkom realtà illi t-telefon tad-dar tagħkom, il-mobile tagħkom jiġi ttepjat u tindunaw għaliex xi ħadd qed jissemma għal konverzazzjonijiet tagħkom. Nemmen illi kull wieħed u waħda minnkom tiġġieldu għad-dritt tal-privatezza tagħkom u tiskandalizzaw ruhkom illi fl-aħħar mill-aħħar tkun qed tiġri xi ħaġa bħal din. Imma mbagħad fl-aħħar mill-aħħar għandna sitwazzjoni u din hija priorità tal-grupp politiku tagħna pereżempju, illi fejn jidħol l-advertisement ir-reklamar fuq bażi online, għandna sitwazzjoni li kumpaniji ġiganteski illi fl-aħħar mill-aħħar huma multinazzjonali qegħdin jinvadu ta' kuljum il-privatezza tagħna mingħajr ħafna drabi. Kull wieħed waħda minna laqqas biss ikun qiegħed jinduna sabiex jibbombardjawna bir-reklamar tagħhom. U dawk huma r-realtajiet illi l-familja politika tagħna qiegħda tipprova tara li permezz tal-leġiżlazzjoni naraw illi nipprevjenu. Dan barra il-punti wkoll li issemmew ħankun qiegħed nikkonkludi fuq dan il-punt x'nistgħu nagħmlu sabiex nissalvagwardjaw il-ħaddiema tagħna. Diġà semmejt numru ta' proposti li huma importanti. Kif qed għalija l-ikbar 3 prioritajiet fir-realtajiet li qegħdin ngħixu, li huma wkoll prioritajiet għall-familja politika tagħna, huma ir-right to disconnect, għandna bżonnu llum qabel għada u l-Kummissjoni ħankomplu għalkemm il-proċess parlamentari spiċċa, ħankomplu nsusu u nżidu l-pressjoni politika fuq il-Kummissjoni sabiex taġixxi mill-aktar fis possibbli u ma tkaxkarx saqajja, imma wkoll għandna naraw il-realtajiet tal-ħaddiema tal-pjattaformi, ir-realtajiet ukoll tat-teleworkers jiġu indirizzati illum qabel għada għaliex l-ebda ħaddiem m'għandu jiġi trattat daqs li kieku kien xi magna, l-ebda ħaddiem m'għandu jiġi ddiskriminat bl-iskuża tad-diġitalizzazzjoni. Id-diġitalizzazzjoni qiegħda hemm biex tgħin il-ħaddiem, id-diġitalizzazzjoni m'għandha qatt tintuża bħala skuża biex tisfrutta lil ħaddiem, speċjalment tisfrutta lil dawk il-ħaddiema illi l-inqas għandhom vuċi fis-soċjetà tagħna. Għal dawk il-ħaddiema bla vuċi dan il-grupp politiku huwa l-leħen tagħhom.
Thank you very much for your interventions. We've come to an end for so many contributions and ideas. We've touched upon many, many topics that can make a difference if implemented at a European level. I now invite Gabi Bischoff, co-chair of the S&D Task Force on the Conference of the Future of Europe, and MEP to deliver closing remarks.
Thank you very much. And I think tonight we saw not only a firework outside, but also a firework inside here of ideas, of questions, of remarks, of introductions. And also we heard the church bells. And I think the church bells, since hundreds of years, reminds us that it's time. It's time either to go to work, to start when people didn't have watches, or to go to church. We are not in a church here. What we created is an agora, to have everyone in here and to engage together, to not listen to speeches, but to encourage everyone to participate, to come up with their own ideas. And this is what is happening European-wide at the moment. We have citizens fora, and I think they feel right like you here. They come from all over Europe, they sit together in thematic groups, and Irache said it, we are there to listen to them. But not just to listen, we are there to hear what ideas they have, what proposals they exchange and in the end agree on to make Europe a better place. And I think we had some of the important issues here. And I will start with the youth. Because the interesting thing, and I think almost everyone said it, you are not just the future. You are the present. You want a good life in Europe. You want good jobs. You want good pay. You don't want to be discriminated because of your sexual orientation or because of your background. And this is what Europe stands for. And therefore, I think really the issue to say, we want the youth to engage. And what we saw tonight is young people are not a homogeneous group. Young people are so diverse. And this is very important to bring the different aspects to the table to say, okay, why did we insist to have 1/3 of all these participants on the Conference of the Future of Europe to be young people? not because they are a homogeneous group, but because you are all the change agents. When you are older, it's like the European Union is more than 70 years old. You often use the paths you did walk already a couple of times. And you, as young people, you go new paths, or you don't even know the path, so you think, which path should we go? And this is about this conference. And as we said, and I think in every issue, be it young participation of young people, digitalization, climate, social justice is the guiding path. And this is a question of the future. And here we discussed the two huge transformations we face regarding saving our planet and the climate and the digitalization. And in this conference on the future of Europe, we have to come up with proposals, because the key question is, running chats, the key question is really, will these transitions increase inequalities, or will it be a driver for more equality and opportunities for all? And this is not determined by technology. This is not determined by polls. This is something which we have to shape politically. And therefore, this conference has to come up with new proposals to look at what we have and to say it's not well equipped to make these transitions fair. And these are the proposals we are going to work on together. We have ideas in the S&D group, we have positions, but we need your ideas, your engagement, and the proposals. And I think it's very clear, it was made by many here, on a dead planet, no one will have a future. And this is very important. This is why it is such an inclusive question also if we address the future. And I have to say, the world of work will change tremendously. And here also, will we make sure that we use the digitalization and also the greening to have better jobs, to have better paid jobs, to have more inclusive jobs, to give everyone an opportunity, or will it be used just to serve the ones that are already well off? These are the questions we are discussing in this conference. And this is why I would like to end my summary with a question. And this question is, when you were invited to this event here, you were thinking, okay, it's your Europe, your say, that sounds appealing to me. Do you think, did you already have a real idea what this conference on the future of Europe was? So who of you already thought, well, interesting invitation, great that I'm invited because I know what this conference is about? Who of you felt that, yeah, I was very informed already about it? So raise your hands, except the Brussels bubble people. They're not allowed to vote here. It's just you. So, yes, this is the reality on the Conference of the Future of Europe. And now I will give you another question. After this interesting debates, lots of speeches, who has the impression that he knows better what this conference is about? I would like to see your hands up if you think after this debate you know more now and it made you a bit more curious even to see what's behind it. Okay, I see much more hands up. Almost all. That is good. This is what the conference was about. And who of you thinks, oh my God, I need to work more and I have to come up with concrete proposals, be it on fundamental rights and strengthening them, and on the basis of think global but act local. So who got more interested, curious, and thinks, I will go on this bloody platform, even that the Maltese are the ones that use it the most, come up with proposals. I am even encouraged now, if you haven't been on the platform yet, to go there. Yeah. Also some, so I think I'll give it back to the S&D group who organized this beautiful conference together with all the Maltese colleagues to say, mission accomplished. This is just the start, it's not an end, and we are all part of this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We've come to an end to our discussion here in Valletta. However, as Gabi said, the conversation does not stop here. Don't forget that you can log on to the S&D platform where you as well can have your say and submit your ideas so that together we can create a better future for us all. Before we end, I would like to remind all the participants to return their headsets unless they want to dream in different languages tonight. We will end on a beautiful note. I feel that we are all coming from different backgrounds over here, but there is one thing that unites us. It's Europe and the European anthem. So I invite you all to stand up so that we can all listen to the anthem. And with that, I thank you for following.